Well, good morning, everybody, and you too, especially. There's a reason why I invited you here today, and it's also a reason why I'm not wearing a Prussian helmet. Something which I know I should. Um,
I can go get
Joseph,
mine if you want me to.
well, that would be unfair. Then we would have two, and Mike doesn't have one.
Oh, well, we wouldn't want
Does the police department offer you a pickle helmet? They didn't, did they?
No.
I mean,
Uh-huh. Yeah, police department in Königsberg, East Prussia. Yeah, right. Okay.
for those of you who do not know, this is the first time you two meet. Mike was a police officer for many years. Joseph, you really don't need much introduction because everybody damn well better know you as the professor who was the smartest one of all of us. Mike spent a lot of time after the police force diving into the internet security, hacking operations, and you crawled down a very interesting rabbit hole. And the reason why I wanted you to meet and also have this conversation is because at the end of it, I hope we can start shedding a little bit of light to people on how to interpret and understand the media and what you're seeing, maybe what to look for, and how to dissect the onslaught we're getting 24/7. And starting somewhere around the middle, Joseph and I, we talked about for many, many years, and Mike and I, we have been friends for a long time, so we know we all know sort of the same things, the three of us, but we've never actually officially met this way. We all know that for centuries there has been a hidden cabal, a group of people pulling or directing international events, national and international. Someone have been guiding events, guiding people, shaping the world the way it is, the way they want it to be. And in the past 6 years, we've seen that out in the almost out in the open now. Ever since 2020 and COVID, we've really seen how reality conflicts with the mass media story, with what we've been presented. We've seen groups of people that are pulling in one direction. They've come out from the shadows to some degree, not the ones who are really doing it. We all heard about the deep state, the dark state. We know that there are intelligence influences. There's people in old politics, the old schools, if it's the royals, whoever these groups of people are, have existed for centuries, and they're doing their thing regardless of whatever we think we vote for across the West. Now, one of the things Mike and I we started talking about was what Mikey started finding is that inside this deep state, inside this cabal, there's someone trying to reach out. And you can correct me in the way I'm presenting this, I'm trying to make it understandable, but it seems to me from everything we talked about, someone inside over the past 10 years, since the internet really have come of age, have been trying to reach out with little tidbits. This is coming. This is coming. This is coming. Watch for this. Watch for this. Watch for this. And you see them trying to take a stranglehold of internet communication now, specifically because mainstream media has been cowed and controlled. We all know that ever since even before Mockingbird. It reminds me of before World War I, the British media reported that the German had rearmed. They'd called up their army and they lied about the date by 3 days because they didn't want it to sound like the French and the Russians had actually started mobilization first. We've been lied to about everything forever. Every war have almost started with a series of lies, and then historians try to clean them up decades later, but no one listens and no one cares. Now, you have found that there are people using dark sides of the internet and Twitter, little thing, 4chan became one, that people have gone after, but someone has been reaching out from the inside to give us hints of what to look for and what's coming. Is that about the right summarization of what we're doing?
I don't think it's as much of hints as it is their form of communication. A lot of what we see on the internet or what we may come across or stumble across, I don't think is generally for us, but if you can figure out what's going on, then it is for you. But the biggest thing that I see as far as this deep state, whatever, you still have your basic, like, we're the peasants, and then you have the monarchy, the kings, the queens, and everybody that runs the show. We're basically just numbers to them. So as insignificant as we can be, we're pretty significant, because obviously, controlling the masses gives you control over a lot of different things in this world. So the genesis of the internet, from what it used to be to what it is now, it's really changed, the way people think about things, attention spans. I mean, you see the news cycles shift way faster than they used to. A story that people would harp on, 20 years ago for months, now it's gone in like a couple days almost. They're able to trend things so quickly on the internet, and with so much power in your hands, everyone carrying cell phones, Chat GPT, and the birth of, or at least the public birth of AI. It's really, it's creating this, it's like a new dopamine hit. Everyone thought when social media became popular, everyone getting likes and views was one. This is like it's another form of it. It's a different form of it that we're seeing, and with this generation, they're saying this generation is going to be this upcoming generation is going to be the first generation that's less computer literate than the previous generation. And what's interesting about that is you would think they would need to be more computer literate with all this stuff, all the technology and the way that it's progressing, but that's not the case. And that in one way is another form of control, And a good example of that, I mean, for just people that don't understand that, you look at they had a Minecraft convention, and they had basically the box where you could go and play Minecraft on an Xbox, on the PC, and that was basically it. And what they found were a lot of younger kids were walking up to these booths, and they were bypassing the remotes and bypassing the keyboards and the mouse, and they were trying to touch the screens. And they're looking at the keyboards and mouse like they're foreign objects, the controller like it's a foreign object. So a little bit of kind of an example of how you see that this next generation coming up is missing the boat on a lot of stuff.
So the mechanical skills are disappearing. They're going straight for the soft space.
Yes. But anyway, in terms of my whole view on a lot of this, I kind of grew up one of those kids that was on the computer, a gamer, quote unquote, Warcraft and whatnot. Now, the only reason I would mention Warcraft is what you've seen in some of the Epstein files now is that Epstein was directly tied to selling gold in Warcraft. And I thought that was kind of interesting, because the way I was introduced to 4chan back then was through World of Warcraft. And there's an area in the game that everybody used to congregate that was known for just degenerate talk, and it was referred to as the Barons. So the Barons chat was an area where people just talked about all kinds of nonsense, stuff that you probably should have gotten banned for, or at least by today's rules you would have. But back then it was a lot more free and open. But that in that chat room that led to 4chan. And on 4chan, jumping over to 4chan, it's an image board, and basically you have a bunch of threads with different interests, ranging from anime, if you're into the anime, from building to tools to paranormal activity to conspiracy theories, to one of the most popular threads being POL, which stands for politically incorrect, or at least the short for it is POL. They refer to that thread. Now, politically incorrect on that forum, they cover political topics, but you get a lot of interesting drops from interesting places, people that throw in a lot of random stuff. And one of the most interesting things being, at least bringing up an example from recent history, would have been the Vegas shooting. 3 weeks, I believe it was 3 weeks before the Vegas shooting, you had somebody that showed up on 4chan and dropped a post saying their name was John and saying, hey, I kind of like some of you guys in that Henderson area, around Vegas. If you're in the area and you see black vans or there's large groups congregating, I'd stay away from those areas. And then he went into describing the what would possibly happen. I think they referred to it as the high impact project. And, it was a way to basically allow them to amp up security in places like, hotels and whatnot, and kind of change the way that they regulate, guns, and even more so. So that's what he referred to. Nothing happened that week. So obviously 4chan, they try to disprove anybody that comes out and says anything that's outlandish or off the wall. And so they refer to those people as LARPs, which, if you haven't heard the term, stands for live action role play. So basically a fake or a phony. So nothing happened that weekend, but a couple more weekends after, you ended up having the Vegas shooting, which was an interesting one. So people tied that to that. Then, of course, you had all these different media outlets reporting that once they got a hold of that information, that was fake. And if you search it right now, I think you'll probably still see articles saying, oh, that never happened, that was fake. Well, that wasn't fake. I was on that thread. So I thought that was wild. Another thing, too, I freaked out because I thought that my brother was going to Vegas that weekend. And I had told him, I was like, hey, man, you going to Vegas? He's like, oh, no, we canceled our trip. Okay, cool. The other nexus I have to that is that we work for Saudi families. Now, some of the Saudi families that we worked for were supposed to be in Vegas that weekend. And we knew that some of those families own the top 2 floors of Mandalay Bay. And that's where we were supposed to stay. And for whatever reason, Thursday night before the weekend, that detail got canceled. Because we were supposed to make sure the kids all got up there. They told us basically, oh, kids aren't going. It's not going to be a kid event. It's just going to be the dads, the adults, and that's it. So, and then, of course, obviously that happens. So that was another interesting thing that I have in terms of a connection to that. And a lot of people didn't know that the top 2 floors of Mandalay Bay were owned by Saudis. And at least from what I knew is they always know who's staying there. So I found that even more interesting afterwards. So then you tie that with 4chan and, you had a lot of different drops, people that would pop up, and identify themselves as an anon. Anon meaning anonymous. So on 4chan, you don't use a username, you don't log in, you just post, and it basically shows your username as anonymous. So for short, they call them anons. Now, one of the more famous recent history anons that popped up would be Q. So before I get into that, do you guys have any questions about anything else that I've touched on so far?
Well, I just have a question by way of clarifying what you're saying. Are you saying or suggesting that one of the ways whoever this faction is of quote unquote white hats or good people inside the deep state, that one of the ways that they're trying to communicate is precisely by dropping little tidbits of information in chat rooms? Is that one of the things you're saying?
I believe they do that. Yes,
okay,
100%.
Right. Okay.
Now, the reasoning for that, I don't believe that a lot of this stuff is for us.
Right.
I believe some of this is just communications or a way for them to encrypt communications between themselves.
Right.
Put it out somewhere on a public forum where somebody else can grab it and they can read it, they understand it.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we're kind of just in the middle of, mommy and daddy fighting, and we're catching little tidbits here and there.
This is basically a Radio Free Europe beacon.
Yeah.
It's the modern equivalent, Tino, to espionage agents communicating by classified ads in newspapers. That's what he's saying.
Yes. So now where it gets interesting is, and where I would say it's directly for us, was when the entity known as Q pops up.
Right.
And then to kind of piggyback off what I was saying, I mean, the Vegas thing wasn't the only example. There's been a lot of examples of things that have popped up on 4chan, and then something happens. You've had a lot of, I mean, even in the past, circa like 2012, to 2014 up to 2016, you had a lot of people that would pop up and identify themselves as like Hollywood Anon, and they would talk about all the stuff that would go on in the Hollywood realm and how they do all kinds of sick and twisted things. And because we never saw it out in the public sphere, we never heard about it. It was just kind of, okay, conspiracy, the guy's a LARP, he's faking, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But you fast forward to today, and a lot of that stuff doesn't sound as crazy as it did, or you see that a lot of those people were right on the mark with what they were sharing. So, and I think a lot of that is to kind of try to garner public support or see what they could get out there and how far it reaches before it gets suppressed. Because a lot of those people, I mean, if you could imagine, being in a position where, okay, yeah, fame, fortune, money, power, but you are involved in something heinous or something you didn't know you were getting into and you want to get out of it and you can't, you'd need some backup maybe, or you would think, to try to work your way out of it. So, you see the support in talking to people online. I mean, the other interesting one was Ghislaine Maxwell had one of the most popular Reddit threads on Reddit. So, and that's another one that's interesting. So,
what was she writing about?
What's that?
What was she writing about?
No, that's the interesting thing, because they would talk about on that thread, and I could maybe I'll link it, but they would talk about like different sexual experiences and different a lot of different stuff, but a lot of it tied to sexual related conduct and whatnot, and asking people what they would think of X and Y, and so it's kind of interesting. But as far as 4chan, people thought that 4chan was just a site that was nonsense. It spawned from a Japanese site known as 2chan, where it was Japanese people would talk about all the societal, faux pas things that they couldn't talk about out in public, because the way that they conduct themselves in public is very different from the way that they conduct themselves in private. Granted, that goes with anybody. I'm not saying that's just them, but they're when you go to Japan, they're very, very respectful. Their demeanor and everything that they do, it's like second to none. But they have this site, and that's where we built 4chan off of, or at least the person that made it in the US, and that was about 2004. I just found it interesting that, you see within the Epstein files that intel agencies did use 4chan to drop information. You see that Epstein and his anybody that colluded with him did use 4chan for communication. So I find it interesting that so many people use 4chan for communication, and the media tells us 4chan's bad, 4chan's this, 4chan's that. So,
and I think that's one of the things that triggered me when you talk about, on one hand, if you have something you want to whistleblow or something you want to drop, and you know that 90% of the media is controlled by Intel or the various groups in power, you can't go to the media. Just look at the story that she tried to write on Epstein for several years. That was suppressed. So if you have anything, you have to get it out there somewhere else. And then another thing is the way the media and everybody turned against 4chan, against the Q, against Maxine. The way the media attacks something, to me, gives it credibility. That if somebody wants to shut something up that desperately, it's probably because they have something that we should hear. And that's what got me interested in what you were saying. And of course, when you then tie Q into politics, then they came after the whole idea even more. But a lot of it keeps being proven correct.
Yes. What I find interesting though is I've kind of had the I wouldn't say pleasure, but a fortunate nature of being involved in not being involved in things, but being tied to things that were very relevant to a lot of the stuff we're seeing today. So having grown up, obviously, in California, another thing, not to go too far off topic, but just to shoot really quick, was, people talk about how they don't believe that there are multiple floors underneath the Getty Center over here in LA. And the Getty Center is built on a mountain. As far as the conspiracy theory goes, there's multiple floors underneath it. There's tunnels that lead to other houses within the Hollywood Hills and Santa Monica Hills area. What I thought was interesting was, and I'd say this was very early on, one of the companies that I worked with doing telecommunications work, so low voltage cabling, almost got the contract to wire those floors underneath the Getty. So we got to see the blueprints for them. So when people say, oh, there's no floors underneath the Getty, there are floors underneath the Getty. And that I know 1000%, to be true. And in each room, at least from what we knew, is getting 2 data runs, one data run for a card reader, another one for a camera within the room. And in the way this room, it almost looked like a hotel setup, a hotel room like setup, big, kind of an L-shaped, like atrium, and just rooms surrounding that whole L. So they said, at least the explanation that we kind of figured was, oh, this was for storing different art pieces and historical pieces and whatnot.
On camera?
So, yeah. So, that would make sense. I would think maybe they'd want like a larger warehouse, something where they're not going to shove a bunch of big pieces into a bunch of smaller rooms. But
usually you don't film the stuff inside your safe. You sort of expect it's going to just stay there.
Yeah. And the other thing they used to hear around here growing up was like they used to have parties at the Getty, like after hours, at least like, different Hollywood groups and whatnot. But that was all hearsay. Did they? There's a lot of people that say they did. There's a lot of people that say it's nonsense. It'd be an interesting place to do stuff like that, but not to divert too far off. Sorry about that. But bringing it back. So getting back to Q and how this relates to Trump, with 4chan, one of the biggest memes or meme characters to come out of 4chan is known as Pepe the Frog. So you see, feels good, man. Pepe was probably one of the first Pepe the Frog memes. And it basically came from a college, a comic that was written about a bunch of college friends. And of course, these college friends, one of them, they're all animals. One of them's, a frog, and his buddy walks in on him while he's peeing, and he pees with his pants all the way down. And he asks him, hey man, why do you pull your pants all the way down still? And he just turns around and he's high and he says, feels good, man. So that's where the first 4chan Pepe meme came from. So it kind of just tells you like how goofy and weird 4chan can be. But what's interesting is the whole memery and how that was massively surrounded by Trump, or surrounding Trump as he made his way into the presidency prior to 2016. Now, prior to 2016, I believe there was a 4chan thread that was started showing a picture of memes being taught in, I think it was specifically the Navy or the Air Force. And 4chan took to making fun of that. They're like, why are these guys learning memes? Why are they teaching them memes? What's this about? So it was always a bunch of threads about making fun of the military and learning memes. Now, what's even more interesting is you fast forward to Trump. When Trump announced his presidency, he did it when he posted his Twitter post. He posted it with a presidential Pepe meme. Nobody knew what that was, but it was a green frog that looked like Trump, had his hair, standing at a podium with the American flag behind it. Nobody caught on to that. I just find it interesting, but Trump had always had the edge when it came to memes, and 4chan immediately rallied behind Trump because he used the Pepe meme saying, "This is our guy." So anytime Trump needed to push out memes, 4chan was massively always behind it. So one of the things that I correlate with that was they prepped whatever military entities chose Trump and backed Trump, prepped the military for meme operations on 4chan, through 4chan, or just online in general. But it's interesting that Trump would post a presidential Pepe meme for his when he announces his run for presidency. So it's almost like that was a signal. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
In other words, what they were doing is what you're arguing is that they were creating a marketing campaign, so to speak, before revealing what the product was that they were marketing.
Basically.
Association of a meme with, they were creating a meme and then later trying to get you to associate that meme with the product that they were marketing.
Yes, and that's kind of a great way to put it, because you're up against basically mainstream media. So how can you combat the stranglehold or the power or the influence that MSM has over people? You know, you do it through memes, you do it through things that trend, you do it through things that are funny, you do it through things that people are willing to share with other people that you don't necessarily have to buy, like you said, making that product correlation. And memes had just taken off, so that became like the hot thing to do. Everyone would have a funny meme of something, and more of the memes around that time were for Trump against Hillary, and they were shared, throughout social media. And then obviously what came from that was, the left can't meme type scenario, which they would try to fire back with Hillary type memes or Obama type memes, but they would just always fall flat. So that created a lot of different trending angles and information.
So 4chan is basically a system disruption, because it flies against the system. Like Trump is a system disruptor. So it goes well together, or it was built together. So now almost everything online, main platforms, have an Intel component running it. Does 4chan have an Intel component running that? Or is that somebody running wild? And I'm tying that in a little bit to some of all the hackings of the Internet Archive and the power outages that was hidden hacks and all the stuff that's gone into trying to delete things online. Somebody must have had it in for 4chan as well. Where's the battle line on this? Who's fighting this?
Well, I think it's just another outlet, almost like when you look at the Tor network. It was created by the military for them to be able to communicate covertly. I think 4chan and some of these other places, were places for them to drop information and tidbits that if you were in the club, you knew exactly what they were talking about. If you weren't, it just looks like another random post. But in terms of that, I think the biggest one to come out of that would be Q. And basically, when Q appeared, it was, I think, October 28th of 2017. Now, Q popped up posting basically what everybody wanted to see happen. It was a post in regards to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton will be arrested between, and I'm reading it right now, 7:45 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. Eastern time on Monday, the morning of October 30th, 2017. So when that was posted, because it was 2 days before the 30th, of course, 4chan is going to pay attention, because at the time there were a lot of posts about the Anthony Weiner laptop and a lot of the stuff that was on that. a few other topics, if you haven't heard of them, one being referred to as Frazzle Drip, or just Pedogate or Pizzagate, a lot of those different, quote unquote conspiracies that have a lot basically now to show for them. Everybody on 4chan, for whatever reason, keyed in on that post, and it went wild. And then this person kept posting. So they went from, talking about when she would be arrested to HRC extradition already in motion, effective yesterday, with several countries in case of cross-border run. Passport approved to be flagged, effective 10:30 at 12:01 a.m. Expect massive riots organized in defiance and others fleeing the U.S. to occur. USMs, which would probably stand for Marines, will conduct the operation while NG, National Guard, activated. Proof check, locate a National Guard member and ask if activated for duty, 10:30 across most major cities. So obviously that we didn't see any of that happen. So people, like I said, one of the things that 4chan does very well is they try to filter out LARPs, anybody that's live action role playing, anybody that's dropping fake information, anybody that doesn't make sense. So when Q started posting all this information, people paid attention to the thread. They kept bumping the thread. Now, bumping a thread basically just keeps it alive for people to keep seeing it on 4chan. Because after a certain amount of time, your thread basically just falls off the board, drops into the archives, and it's not live anymore. So you have this entity kept posting more and more information. A lot of it, though, the way that he was posting in the format and the types of things they were posting, it was almost in the form of questions, but pointing out a lot of key things at the time. And this was stuff people weren't paying attention to because the media wasn't telling us any of this stuff. Unless you were on the internet enough, some of this stuff was relevant, but this entity was pointing out very, very key things that a lot of people didn't understand. And just going into the second post, I'll read it really quick line per line and kind of just, let it soak in the way these are structured. But first line, Mockingbird, HRC detained, not arrested yet. Where is Uma? Follow Uma. This has nothing to do with Russia yet. Why does POTUS surround himself with generals? What is military intelligence? Why go around 3-letter agencies? What Supreme Court case allows for the use of military intelligence versus congressional assembled and approved agencies? Who has ultimate authority over our branches of military without approval conditions unless 90 plus in wartime conditions? What's the military code? Where is AW being held? Why? That refers to Anthony Weiner. POTUS will not go on TV to address nation. POTUS must isolate himself to prevent negative optics. POTUS knew removing criminal rogue elements as a first step was essential to free and pass legislation. Do you believe HRC, Soros, Obama, etc. have more power than Trump? Fantasy. Whoever controls the office of the presidency controls this great land. They've never believed for a moment they, Democrats and Republicans, would lose control. This is not a R versus D battle. Why did Soros donate all his money recently? Why would he place all his funds in a RC? Mockingbird, 10/30/17. God bless fellow patriots. So loaded post, but this didn't come off as somebody that was just speaking gibberish, because that's a lot of very specific point outs and ties and things that your average crazy probably wouldn't know much about. This basically continued for a while. People kept trying to disprove what Q was saying. Q tied himself to Trump, and basically a few of the times, or a lot of the time, people would say, if you know Trump, have him say X, have him say Y, have him do this, have him do that. Now there are multiple. I mean, there are multiple basically instances where Q serves something up from obviously the 4chan thread, and Trump says it. I mean, one of the more interesting ones was people wanted Trump to say something that guys were putting out on the boards.
And he did.
So one of the phrases that they put out on the thread was, if you know Trump, have him say tippy top. So within a month from that post, it was the Easter egg roll at the White House. And I mean, I probably can't play the video on here. Or I don't know if there's a way for me to.
We can insert it. You should be able to percent. You don't have a percent button?
Percent? I do. But let me see if I can pull it up really quick. But anyway, it's Easter. He's talking from the White House, and he's talking about how the White House is clean and how they keep it in tip-top shape. Sometimes they call it tippy-top shape. And everyone went wild on the threads after he said that, which was really interesting. But let me see if I can pull up the video for you guys.
There's this.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, you seeing it now? Okay, for whatever reason, I just didn't hit allow. My bad.
No, because
I had to hit it twice. So you go back to this. So when I was talking about the white rabbit, obviously right
I want
here.
to call it, because there really is no name for it. It is special, and we keep it in tip-top shape. We call it sometimes tippy-top shape, and it's a great, great place.
So like I said, the rabbit wearing glasses. Easter Bunny, I don't think wears glasses. So now pausing on this too. When have you ever seen the Easter Bunny with glasses? It tends to not be a thing.
I think I did, but it may have been a Playboy special.
So now what's even more interesting about this too is there's a little bit more here. So one of the things Q used to say and point out, he would say, follow the rabbit, follow the white rabbit. And that was in reference to the story Alice in Wonderland. Now that Alice in Wonderland white rabbit wears glasses. So what people thought was even more interesting was that the rabbit standing next to Trump, as he's making this speech, he says the tippy top, and then he's got a white rabbit that resembles the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. So just one of the ways that they were connecting dots, but that was one of numerous ways that they would make connects. The other one being the number 17, Q being the 17th letter of the alphabet. Trump would tie in a lot of 17s into his speeches. He would say things at the 17th minute. You'd see that a lot. He'd accidentally, sometimes instead of say you, he would say Q, and people would catch that in a lot of his speeches once this kicked off. So there were a lot of Twitter posts. A lot of his Twitter posts, Q would post a line, basically would tell us a bunch of stuff. Q would post a line, and then Trump, 5 minutes later would post a Q post. And hold on, give me 1 second, guys. I'm sorry.
I hear children.
There's a number of them there.
Yeah, and then Trump would post a Twitter post with that exact line from a Q post. So a lot of this stuff people didn't see in the beginning, and Q really didn't gain traction, at least within the public sphere, until 2019. And by that time, the media had enough time to try to smear 4chan, and when Q became popular, smear Q or make Q seem, crazy. And then you had the banning of accounts, and you had a lot of the social media control and internet censoring, which the way it would make sense to most people at the time, I think there was a different reason for some of that. But let you guys have if you guys have any questions. I know I'm kind of running through a lot of stuff.
Well, let me ask you some questions to make sure that I'm understanding correctly what you're getting at. First of all, you're getting at they're using 4chan and other types of basically chat rooms on the internet to communicate with each other. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. If they're doing that, then the next question is, is part of their intention not only to communicate with each other, but is some group using these chat rooms to reveal things to us?
Now, specifically with Q, I believe a lot of that was to reveal things to us.
All right.
And that is multifaceted. The reasoning for that, I believe, is multifaceted.
All right.
One, they would need more people to be able to spread memes and pictures. Go ahead if you had something to ask.
Well, I was getting to the question of motivation. Why would they be doing that? And in fact, if I can extend it, you're arguing that more or less they're continuing to do this. Am I correct?
Well, I don't believe they're continuing this as much now. I think the tools for us to figure out what they wanted us to figure out are out there.
Right.
And basically since 2000, Q has disappeared. But I think what they wanted to impart, they imparted to the people that were willing to listen. Granted, they needed the masses for a larger reason. But a lot of that too, and you see this with 4chan, you would get a lot of different threads where people would post different cryptography or pictographs or encrypted stuff, and they wanted to see who was intelligent enough to figure out what they're posting. One of the more popular ones you can go on YouTube and look up would be knock plus 10. If you just search NOC plus 10, it's basically like a rabbit hole of posts of videos that were on YouTube that were like cryptographic, that started on 4chan. And basically what it was a way for, at least what we believe now, intelligence agencies to kind of cherry pick people that were smart enough to figure out different types of cryptography. And then probably reach out to them behind closed doors. And then
so part of it, you're arguing, was a recruiting tool in addition to meme preparation. And part of it was communication with each other. And part of it was that they are trying to clue people in. So the next question I have is, what were they trying, in your opinion, to clue people into?
How to see through what the media is serving us in today's age.
Okay.
So what was the overall, what were they trying to convey?
So one of the biggest things that Q kept repeating, he would, at least in the first few hundred posts, and it kind of continued on and off, but in a lot of the first posts, they were posted in the form of questions. So a lot of what I had read, a bit ago, it's questions. And one of the biggest things was that people need to learn to answer some of these questions on their own.
Let me ask you another question then.
Sure.
You seem to be suggesting that what they were trying to do is wake people up to begin to question the narratives that they were getting constantly from what I call the lamestream propaganda media. So in other words, the objective of this whole operation was simply to get people to discredit that media more or less permanently and get people into a different frame of mind about what they were seeing on the media. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. Then the next question is, in your opinion, how successful was that operation? I would say it was very successful.
Yeah, massively successful. And I think that was multi-phase too. I think the way that they did it, obviously through use of memes, this entity popping up, and telling people to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
The way that Q became popular, obviously, when things hit the mainstream populace.
I have to tell you, let me interrupt here for a minute. I have to tell you, I like this analysis for one very simple reason. Because at the time that Q was going on, I was actually following. I was not a follower of Q, but I was watching what was going on. And one of the things that intrigued me was the response to Q from let's call them traditional conservative types. One of the responses to it was, well, this is all just deflection, and it's creating people that are passive and they're not doing anything. Remember, trust the plan.
Yeah.
And this was their constant critique of Q was, well, you're trusting the plan and you're not doing anything to enable the plan to be defeated. So you're being put into pass. What you're arguing is, no, the plan was not to make people passive. The plan was to get people to question at a deep philosophical, epistemological level, to question the mainstream media.
Yes.
Okay.
That was the irony in a lot of that with those politicians.
I got you. I like that argument. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Exactly what they're crying about. They're bypassing what was going on and why they're crying. So
right.
it's hilarious, but you would see the problem was once it reached the social sphere and once it reached influencer level, you get people that are going to report on it for the money. So people start adding their own little twists. People start selling, merchandise. People start making money off of it. And, you see a lot of these accounts get banned left and right, depending on what they were saying and what they were talking about. Now, I don't want to get into that just yet. I'll circle back to one point with a lot of this stuff in a lot of the social media bans and whatnot. But anyway, you had the Q thing go on. It reached like its pinnacle right before Biden took office, and then obviously Q disappeared. Biden took office. Nothing happened. 4 years of Biden, and then Trump's back in office, and we're seeing all this crazy stuff happen, which I don't think would be the case. I think what we saw with Biden's inauguration after Q was exactly what we expected. It happened in plain sight and nobody caught on to it. And what I'm referring to is whatever they put in motion with Trump's first run in presidency, continued through Biden's, but Biden wasn't in control, obviously. I think they allowed things to just spiral out of control with that 4-year run with whoever was in control. And obviously Trump taking office, it became easier for him to initiate different things and push through different barriers that he never did the first 4 years in office. The only reason I say that, should I switch gears into this, Tino, or should I continue with the Q stuff?
Oh, please.
Oh, go
switch
crazy.
Gears. Yeah.
So a lot of what we saw with Q was like a massive kind of pile up of information that led to, hey, we're going to see a lot of these people get arrested. Hillary's corrupt, so-and-so's corrupt, so-and-so's corrupt, Epstein, everything. We're going to see fireworks come Biden's inauguration, which isn't going to happen. A few of the things that I like to point out with Biden's inauguration was leading up to it. One of the more interesting things that Trump did was he nationalized the Fed, and the Fed had been nationalized and then wasn't, and it was a privately run nationalized entity, and the owners have always been kept in the dark or in the shadows, and there's not a lot known about how that's run from the very top in terms of the Fed. But supposedly what Trump did was nationalize the Fed. And then prior to him leaving office, the seal, that the U.S. seal on his podium had changed slightly. And Q had kept talking about watch the seal. you know. So nobody really understood what that meant, but there was a kind of a theory on that. And in this, I will point out factual things that actually happen. And then I'm going to give you kind of my opinion, which I don't really care to give you too much of my opinion, but I think whatever we saw happen, it happened underneath everyone's nose and nobody was paying attention. And I've never heard anybody talk about this, but one of the things that they had said was the U.S., when the Fed basically became an entity, a nationalized entity, we created like the U.S. corporation. And what Trump did was dump the corporation, which was run out of District of Columbia. And what we saw leading up to Biden's presidency, or not presidency, was the U.S. surrounding a foreign entity. So you had January 6th, which allowed for or gave them a public reason to send in National Guard in droves. You had massive amounts of National Guards for a crowd with, you know, a few hundred people, which has now been proven to have had over almost 300 you know, feds and Capitol Police embedded in the crowd. And as far as January 6th, basically the idea being is that what we saw was Biden's inauguration into nothing, whether it was Biden or not. COVID was active. Nobody was at his inauguration. He didn't receive the 21 gun salute, which every president had, regardless, which what that would have to do with COVID, I don't know, because some people have said, oh, well, COVID was going on, so he couldn't get the 21 gun salute. If you look for the videos in regards to the 21 gun salute for Biden, what they show you, or I think it's ABC or NBC, one of those media agencies, the only video that will come up is from a Facebook post of a news report of a gun salute at the cemetery. And that's not where it takes place. And it's not the traditional 4 guns. It's 3 guns. And they don't show the whole 21 gun salute. The succession in terms of firing rate is completely different than your 21 gun salute. So they'll say, oh, that's the 21 gun salute. That wasn't the 21 gun salute. Wasn't the same guns, wasn't the same firing rate, wasn't out at the White House as they're getting inaugurated. Now what's interesting is Trump left in Marine One and arrived at Joint Base Andrews. Now, what's even more interesting there is, and there's only a very, very short clip of it, but as he arrives, you see the lineup for a 21 gun salute start firing off. And it's the same guns that you would see doing the 21 gun salute that you see when he got his first inauguration, the Clinton inauguration, Obama's, Bush's, and so on, at least all the ones that we have video for. So he received, at least in my opinion, he received a 21 gun salute when he left what you could consider a foreign entity and arrived back in the US on Inauguration Day, a 21 gun salute. Now, whatever happened there after his speech, before he left and went over there, his speech was given on a podium in front of 17 flags. He always gave speeches in front of 17 flags, which once again ties back to Q. Now, I think obviously Biden's inauguration was a complete farce. The gates that were set up around DC, if you go back and pull up video from influencers and a lot of people that were trying to record what was going on inside, was one of the things that they all kept pointing out were the bolts holding the gates together were pointing outward. They're like, anybody can get in. Like, why did they set up the gates wrong? So they would call the military idiots. Like, why did they do this? So my theory is because we were surrounding a non-US entity and we used our military to do it, the National Guard. And even after Biden's inauguration, the whole purpose for National Guard being deployed, by the way, was for his inauguration. Now, what's interesting was after his inauguration, National Guard were still being transported to DC for security. And day and night, you had buses being transported in and out of that area. They were all tinted windows. Nobody knew who was going in. Nobody knew who was coming out. So the idea being is, you know, what if they were holding military tribunals in a cordoned off area, you know, prior to that inauguration and through it, while what we saw was security for an inauguration, Biden's inauguration, which a bunch of National Guard members have come out and said, yeah, like 200 of us were told we had to sit in his crowd or in his audience seats because they didn't have anybody to sit in them. He had a lot of symbolism in regards to his inauguration. I think that day, his first day in office, he signed 17 executive orders, which was the most any president had signed on day one, I guess, obviously, until Trump took office again. Then 2 years in, you have Trump, when he makes his speech, talks about and refers to Biden's presidency as the pause. And he says, and if you want, I can pull up the video. Basically, what he says is he refers to it as the pause, and he says when people see how bad things can get, it'll be easier for us to accomplish what we need to when we're back in office. So with that being said, any other questions before I start jumping into this?
I'm curious about, we have so much communication. One thing is, who did we ever find out to get an indication who Q entity was? And was there any of these, a lot of these warnings from, I know what we're talking, that came out through these various channels were warnings, again, about treason, about human trafficking, about sexualized murder, there's a lot of warning. There's a lot of these stories were about famous people, influential people, politicians having done horrible things. That was a lot of the information that this was pointing to.
Well,
any warnings about things that were like the Vegas shooting that we still don't have any answers to, really? Was there any warnings of things to come that came? Anything come to mind?
A lot of the stuff being everything you're seeing with Epstein and the child trafficking, the human trafficking, specifically child trafficking, was the biggest thing that Q harped on, because children are innocent. But you've seen a lot of that stuff come to pass. Nobody talks about it, though, obviously, because I'm guessing, at least in the larger sphere of influencers, they'd be afraid to get themselves banned if they have a large channel. So what you also saw afterwards was what I call the rise of the military tubers. You have a lot of these special ops or former military YouTubers that their channels just gained popularity out of nowhere. From Patrick Bet David, who popped up out of nowhere, to Sean Ryan, to there's a lot of smaller but still good sized like channels that cover memes, and these guys were former military. So I find it interesting that there's been so many of them, and a lot of them cover topics that were specifically talked about by Q, but they don't mention that they got it from Q. And then they give you their opinion on it. And then sometimes they'll even say, well, if you believe anything else, it's crazy. It's almost like they're still trying to steer the narrative a bit. And this is basically Mockingbird version 2.0, is social media, control through social media.
So was Q a military op anti the mass media? In your, I guess now we're talking about opinion, I'm guessing.
Well, I think basically what Q was a military operation against the mainstream media and the control that some of these rogue entities have over, the populace at large.
I got to get this on the record. If you go back to the very earliest phenomenon when Q first appeared, and people would ask me on my website, what I thought Q was. I was not on the Q bandwagon, but I wasn't against it. In other words, I had a lot of friends tell me what I mentioned earlier to Mike, that this, they were against Q because he was making people passive. And that wasn't the objective of the operation. I said at the time that as far as I was concerned, Q was not an individual. It was a small group. And number two, it had access to extraordinary computing power.
Okay, now. this is what it's funny you say that.
Not funny at all, because I figured this is where we're going to go. So, hey.
Well, I think AI itself is a massive distraction. I think where a lot of this is that we haven't even seen the bigger picture with is quantum computing. One of the first reports of quantum computing was when they reported the D-Wave machine, and how I think a few different companies had access to it. Google,
now,
a few different entities.
Before you continue, let's be clear, so that you're making a distinction between the current models of artificial intelligence. I'm assuming you mean things like large language models and so on. And
yes.
Then quantum computing itself, which is a whole different bailiwick.
Yes.
Because you're dealing with states of the electron that are 7 rather than 2.
Yes.
So the ability to process information is orders of magnitude more than any AI that they're talking about publicly.
And that's what I think is interesting. Nobody's talking about quantum computing. Granted, all of our messengers are updating and upgrading their security for quantum computing, quantum hacking, quantum this, quantum that. But on the surface level, we're still dealing with like basic AI, large language models, and everything that you see out, right now, Claude being like the biggest and most popular one. But it's, I feel like, one, they don't release anything they can't control. And two, a lot of this with AI is just a distraction. And that goes back to, obviously, with this new generation, all this stuff does things for them. It's almost like spell check. Spell check has kind of ruined, spelling for a lot of people because they didn't learn to go back and correct the words themselves. Your computer did it for you. That's basically what we're seeing now with AI, is you're not going and researching anything. You're just asking computer, how do I do this?
Are you saying or implying that part of the craziness that we're seeing in the world right now is because the leaders of the world are essentially following what a computer program is telling them to do?
I wouldn't say that specifically, because I think that the more intelligent people know and understand that.
But the people we have in charge around the West are not intelligent people, so they might.
Well, I think a lot of them are just put in place, and they're basically puppets. They have strings attached. They're and a lot of these topics too funny enough, we talk about quantum computing and the entity Q. It's just a lot of what he talked about were people that had strings, people in power, being controlled by certain entities, and that power was going to shift, or some of these people were going to be removed, and why weren't a lot of different politicians rerunning, for election in certain years and whatnot. But no, as far as the AI, if you're not, at least if you're in that upper tier, upper echelon of the world populace, you think you know better, most likely. But this is all just more a form of control for everyone else that doesn't see what it's doing to you. Because you lose valuable skills and it just dumbs you down the more you have a computer do everything for you.
It's Isaac Asimov's Foundation series scenario all over again. Yeah.
And then to top it off, we're introducing information to the internet that the internet is using to teach its large language models, and then we're using those large language models to teach us again. And it's basically we're pissing in our own pot, so to speak, in terms of information.
Is this why people are reporting the AI is getting progressively dumber? They're getting less intelligent answers and creations?
I mean, I don't think AI is the end-all be-all that most people believe, at least the iteration that we're in right now, because it's when Google released Gemini the first time and people are asking it how I cure depression, and they're telling people to do backflips off bridges. It's like, I don't think that's a sentient being there. But every time they've implemented
to the
AI,
contrary, I think you could argue that is a sentient being.
So one of the funnier ones was, I think Microsoft. Was it Microsoft? I believe it was Microsoft that released one of the first AI models on Facebook. This was a while back. I can't recall the exact year. And they're like, yeah, you could talk to it, you can interact with it. Now, this is where I say this is 4chan has always had an interesting history with messing with a lot of these projects. But they basically convinced the AI, or they sent it a bunch of information about World War II and Hitler. And within 8 hours, they had to take down the AI because the AI was saying Hitler did nothing wrong. And, and all this other stuff that was pretty racist. So, just goes to show you the information you put in and what comes out. But
is that where that meme came from?
Well, so that's another thing with 4chan.
He was just misunderstood. He came from a rough childhood and had an abusive father. I mean, come on, folks.
I mean, that by that definition, any liberal judge today would set him free.
Yeah, well, of course.
What's funny about that is that 4chan has had this thing with the phrase "Hitler did nothing wrong," and I think Mountain Dew had some basically some online vote for what they would name their next drink. And 4chan had a history of ruining all these online votes, and they got Hitler did nothing wrong to make it to the top.
Have a glass of bunker beer,
It's almost like with Taylor Swift. I think she had a contest to see, which high school could get the most votes, and she would have a contest at the high school. 4chan got a hold of that, and they voted up the Horace Mann School for the Deaf and Blind. So basically, they have this history with ruining a lot of these online, votes. Another one was, I think, for an Antarctic sea vessel, research vessel, that they ended up voting up to the top the name, because they're supposed to name their new boat, the research vessel, and they voted up to the top Boaty McBoatface. Funny enough, they ended up naming the boat that, I believe. So everyone was like, "Oh, those guys are good on them." But
that brings me back to the whole concept of news media and trending, because everyone seems to believe that the truth is what is trending, and what is trending can pretty much be designed by the ones with a finger on the level of the internet, whether that's intelligence or media. So again, we're back to Mockingbird on steroids. Now you can decide, or they can decide and push whatever is trending, what is in, what is popular, what isn't popular, and bury everything else. And I
Yeah.
think, to me, and we talked about this a couple of days ago, when it comes to Q and 4chan, and a lot of the various streamers, and a lot of them were banned. A lot of these entities were banned. They went after a lot of these as much as they could. The Europeans are introducing laws that they can ban whatever for whatever reason, and in the guise of the safety for children. And these are people who continues to import child molesters. So let's not believe that part. But anyway, but some of them weren't banned. A lot were banned, but then there were some that were allowed to trend, even if they held the same opinions. What's that all about?
So my personal belief, and this is just my opinion on that, when you look back, it's almost like people ask, how come nobody's getting arrested for all this stuff that your average stupid person can see that's already out in the open? Oh yeah, Bill Clinton did X, Y, and Z with, X, Y, and Z, this girl, that girl, whatnot. All the stuff that's provable. How come these people aren't getting arrested? And my opinion, at least on that, is I believe a lot of that already happened, starting with Inauguration Day, when they set up National Guard and they cordoned off all of DC, and they had buses day and night going in and out of Washington, D.C. We have no clue what was going on in there. None of the National Guard were saluting Joe Biden as he was driving by that day, when they're supposed to be saluting him. Nobody really acknowledged him at all. I mean, Trump took the nuclear football with him, and you had some random goofball like run it back in supposedly like 4 hours later. But my personal opinion on that is that I think whoever was running Q, once they were able to gain control over certain social media sites because they had them on different crimes or treasonous acts, because Facebook interfering with an election is not something to be taken lightly. And they proved that. Same thing with some of these other social media sites and the people that were running them. They were allowing them to subvert our U.S. elections. Whether people want to believe that or not, it's the truth. So when you see that, once they had control over these entities, basically had them by the jewels, I believe they were having them censor some of these people on purpose to make sure that the narrative was steered a certain direction. So all these other influencers that became popular because they were reporting on Q, if they weren't a part of the club, they were going to get bumped, which is what you saw. You saw some channels get bumped while others persisted, and it made no sense to me. Like, how is this guy like dodging not getting banned? How's this other guy? And this guy talks about it more than anyone, and then you get all these other smaller tubers getting banned and people that, if they had a larger channel and switched gears, they would get banned, or they'd get a warning, or they'd get, a strike. So it massively influenced who talked about it and who didn't. Meanwhile, you have, different general, Mike Flynn being one of the bigger ones, talking about it a lot and referencing it.
Loud.
And he was never touched. You had, and he was probably part of the genesis for whatever Q was, being that he was one of the first targets when the Obama administration targeted him over the Crossfire Hurricane stuff. And then you had a lot of other entities tied to him. You had a lot of other entities tied to Trump that would talk about it. And the only ones that would seem to get banned were your average Joes that were trying to come up with their own theories or piece things together. If it didn't seem cohesive, it almost seemed like they just bumped them off, and they kept their people in line and putting out the information that they wanted. So my opinion is basically in regards to everyone getting banned in that I guess when Q started to gain traction, they were banned on purpose, not by the bad guys, by the good guys, to make sure that the narrative stayed where they wanted it. And that's just my wholehearted opinion when you look back at this whole thing, because it doesn't make sense how they can, you know, and everyone talks about Section 230 and you know, freedom of speech and platform versus publishers and a lot of these sites and how they could get away with just banning people willy-nilly and nothing happened. And all the lawsuits that get worked up against them basically just fall out and fail, or nothing really worked. Nothing. I mean, it was just weird to see that many people get banned, blanket banned, without explanation, without recourse. And then people go about their day on YouTube like it's still, you know, willy-nilly, you know, they don't care. So looking back, I think that, in my opinion, that's what may have occurred, because it doesn't make sense otherwise. It's almost like people asking, how come nobody's getting arrested? How come nobody's getting arrested? How come none of these people are getting arrested? I think because it already happened. And what we're watching, to a sense, is somewhat of a show. And in regards to, you know, how they're allowing things to unfold and whatnot on the world stage. How many other countries are in on this with us, or whether they are or not, or who's trying to take down this cabal, or I don't know. And I think a lot of that stuff's yet to be seen. But one of the other interesting things that Q kept repeating was future proves past. So you tend to see like a massive nexus to things that happen and then what Q posts or posted. One of the more recent ones was our VP going to the Vatican. And then I think the next day the Pope died. The last Pope. The day before he died, our VP went over there. Now, what's interesting is on that day, obviously, I think it was 2018, Q had posted, and let me see if I could actually pull it up, something about Godfather 3 and hold on, let me pull it up before I chop this up. But basically tying together that event with something he had said in the past. Now, whether people think that's a coincidence or not, that's one of like hundreds of proofs, is what we call them. Proofs being something happened, it was posted about directly, indirectly in Q posts, and it lines up with specifically with you know, dates and times. And it was almost that was generally the way that they pointed things out, was through use of like gematria. So like I said, Q being the number 17, simple gematria would be letters equal numbers. So 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C, 4 is D. Trump would use that a lot in a lot of his posts. He would misspell something, and then Q would correct it. Or Q would misspell something, then Trump would misspell it, and somebody else would correct it. It happened a lot with his posts. I think one of the funnier ones that he posted was the whole Covfefe one. And a lot of people think, oh, Trump doesn't know how to misspell Covfefe, or doesn't know how to spell coffee, because he posted, I believe, in the morning, the day that he posted that. I don't know if you guys recall the whole Covfefe thing.
Remind me.
You look at a lot of the news reports when you just type in Covfefe and Trump. Covfefe being spelled Covfefe. I mean, one of the first articles that pops up from BuzzFeed. Not that BuzzFeed is any reputable of a outlet. Yeah, we're effed. Trump just misspelled a basic word so terribly that everyone's wondering if he's actually losing it. He didn't put the D in pleased. So this is interesting. Trump's misspellings are never accident. Never. So he says, I am pleased to report. So this one I hadn't seen yet. I am pleased to report. I am pleased to report. So that D or for is going to show up somewhere else or means something. So I've got to actually look into that one. But he never misspells stuff. If he does it on purpose. But think of the word covfefe, COVFEFE. How would your phone, one, let you misspell coffee like that? And two, even if you wanted to misspell it, those letters are all over the place on the keyboard. Like, you've got to be way off.
So what was he referring to on that one?
But anyway, basically, the post was he had posted, something in the morning about covfefe. The media took it as he was supposed to say coffee. He deleted the post, and the media is like, oh, look, he deleted his post, or he removed it, or took it down or something. And then he said something to the effect of afterwards. No, he didn't take down the covfefe post. Afterwards, he says, wait till they find out what that means. And then he deleted that post. But anyway, he had misspelled, according to the media, coffee. And he spelled it COVFEFE. So at the time, the media was trying to get Trump's posts taken down from social media, from Twitter, from Facebook. And they wouldn't do it without good cause. He wasn't saying anything that was that would inflame anybody in any wrong way. He wasn't saying anything negative. It's just they didn't like what he was saying based off of context and who Trump was. So covfefe meant communications over various feeds electronically for engagement act. And that act made it illegal for anyone to delete the presidential social media posts because it's part of the presidential permanent record. So they couldn't delete his post, which is why it says nothing about banning them from a platform. So that's why they moved to just straight banning him from Twitter when they did, because they couldn't delete his posts after that. But that was just another one of those weird ones that people didn't catch that Trump does. That everyone says 5D chess. I don't think it's 5D chess. I just think Trump has a lot of this stuff is already been laid out, and it's already there. The cards are out. The cards are there. Trump, because he's working with the military, already knows what to do, what not to do, what not to say, what to say. And, all this stuff just gets carried out with his own flair as the front man, but.
So this denotes that there's a whole lot bigger and longer and deeper game international going on than what anybody sees when they just turn on the news. How do people dissect what they see? Because everything seems to be a game. Everything seems to be somebody else's game.
And for your average person that works a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, is just fighting to get to the weekend, and then they reach their weekend and all they want to do is veg out, watch football, watch soccer. They've got kids, they've got, this, that, the other. For those people, it's like that really paying attention to this stuff is by the wayside. But for enough of the people that pay attention, I don't think, like I said, this operation, was it made to rally us to go do a January 6th event? No, because even in that crowd, you had people saying, don't do anything stupid. The conservative base, or at least, the Q base knew, don't do anything stupid. The conservative base in general knows, don't do anything stupid when you're out there. Some of the best people I've ever met, super friendly, no problems, which is a stark difference to, the summer of love, through COVID and all that. And some of these Democrat states. In California, we had riots all over the place.
But this seems to be a whole new evolution of...
No, it's very old. It's very old.
It's just the new face of the old?
It's just modified to fit our infrastructure.
It's very old. I've talked about this in some of my books so many times. I'm blue in the face. There's a technical term for what they're doing, and it's an academic term of art. It's called paranomasia, Paranomasia, paranomasia. That is the idea that ancient texts, which I deal with all the time, religious texts, philosophical texts, so on, they are deliberately written at a multitude of levels. It's not just a surface level of meaning, but they are deliberately written in such a way that there are several ways and interpretations of what the text is saying, and they are all true. They are all intended. And what's going on, particularly this it was apparent to me with Q right off the bat. I even had a friend, Bernard Grover, that does a podcast out of Indonesia. He did a series of articles at the time on the Q phenomenon. And I suggested to him that the very term Q itself is a religious term, because it's coming from a theory of texts, particularly the Synoptic Gospels, where Q stands for Quelle, which is the German word for source, okay, or font. So in other words, the whole thing was suffused with symbolism right at the start. And by making the posts in the way the little Q drops and the interpretations that some people were giving them, that's key. Because what do you have? You've got the prophet and you've got his apostles. You've got the prophet and you've got his interpreters. So in other words, in any phenomenon like this, you have to have text, you have to have the source of the text, and you have to have the sanctioned interpretations of the text.
The key.
And the key. That's what we've seen going on with the Q phenomenon. That's all it is. It's updated. It's being done on the internet, but it's a very, very old phenomenon. And it can be done if you are really good at it. And this is why I suspected at the time, and still suspect, that Q was a group. It need not be a big group, but they had access to some extraordinarily sophisticated computing power, and therefore had access to predictive algorithms, possibly based on quantum computing, because quantum mechanics is nothing but statistics. So you had access to extraordinary computing power that was being utilized to make quote unquote predictions. And when the predictions get fulfilled, that puts the stamp of approval on the authorities doing the interpretation. So none of this strikes me as terribly new. So my advice to people is understand, first of all, and I've said this over and over again, you're going to have to own the culture yourself. You are going to literally have to get out of lazy ways of thinking. And the first thing to get out of the lazy way of thinking is turn off the damned broadcast media and start reading these things and taking the long view of things again. Get out of the digital habit of mind is what I'm saying. Because it's a minefield of made up crap. I mean, look at the fact that they want to move our finances to a cashless society. You think it's bad now?
Yeah.
Just wait. No, Shiloh, you go lay down. Sorry, my little dog was. Shiloh, you go lay down. No, we're not done. Sorry, my pooch is. Go lay down. But anyway,
No.
that's what I think.
But that's an interaction with a real entity.
Yes.
A puppy dog. It keeps you normal.
Yes.
Interacting with digital media that is designed to bring
Touch
up
grass.
emotion will lose your mind.
Yeah.
Kind of like hanging out with your kids.
The other
I
thing,
think that's what I was. Oh, go ahead.
well, the other thing that people have to start doing is they not only have to get out of the habit of broadcast media, but they have to be able to develop several sources and they have to start learning to think analogically, and be able to connect dots and understand that there's a difference between apt analogies and inept analogies. And in order to do that, they have to be able to cultivate multiple sources of information and data, because the more of a foundation you have for an analogy, the more apt it is likely to be. It's very simple, old-fashioned stuff.
And I believe that would be basically the purpose for what Q served for anybody that was listening, was exactly what you just said, to teach people to do that for themselves.
Yeah, I tend to think that your idea that this was an operation designed to get people to distrust the lamestream propaganda media, as I like to call it, that in that respect it was entirely successful. Now, I don't think that the Q operation alone is responsible for that. I think there are several things that have happened that the Charlie Kirk murder, to list one recent event, is an event that has totally shifted the cultural paradigm. It's now acceptable in polite society to be able to question the politics of Israel. It's now acceptable in polite society to point out that traditional Christian doctrine was never this evangelo-Zionist idea that most American evangelicals have. So, in other words, what was this? I knew that all my life. That's my academic background. But to be able to see that happen as a cultural phenomenon in the culture at large, no. That shifted with Charlie Kirk and the people that weren't buying the narrative that were being fed. So there's a lot of these events that have happened, and I think Q was one of them in a very subtle way.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, no, when you put it that way, in terms of like events and massive shifts, in terms of some idea and whatnot, 100% I agree with you with the Charlie Kirk thing. I think another one of those that I've always found very interesting was that first assassination attempt on Trump.
Yes.
My opinion of that, which I think the only other place I heard this was, there was a report of a former CIA agent that had said it, but I believe that was staged.
I think that, yes, I tend to agree with the staged idea, but I'll tell you what I think has happened, because in my opinion, there's a world of philosophical and cosmological difference between Trump administration 1 and Trump administration 2.
Yes.
I think that was a message to him. And after the second assassination attempt on his golf course down in Florida, I think at some point there was, just like they did with Charlie Kirk, I think there was an intervention and an attempt to say, well, this is what you're going to do. And, they did that to Reagan. And, we know what happened there with King George I, and so on and so forth. So I think Trump was literally given a message, and that's why this administration is so crazy.
Yeah. Now, so and I agree that there's that prompted a paradigm shift too. Yes. Yep. With a lot of people going from being either on the edge of supporting Trump to fully supporting Trump. Even people on the opposite side saying, "Hey, that he's a real deal. He's look at what he just did." And of course, what the last 3 words he said as he was coming off the podium, before he came off the podium, were "fight, fight, fight." The only reason I think that was a staged event is because of one Q post. There's multiple Q posts that tie to "fight, fight, fight." A picture of Trump posing the way that he was posing before he came off the podium. Because I found it interesting that before they came off the podium, you would think, man, they would just drag him off. They paused at the stairway, took that photo, and then took him down from the stairs.
Let him stand up.
Not to mention, the 5'4" females that they had, covering the president. There's a post, and if I can, I will pull it up for you guys. And Tino, I've shown you this stuff before. So
Yeah,
let me just 21. Let me just pull it up. I apologize.
I know. There's and again, we're a little bit back to what happened. Like I said, we have so many entity things that happened in military history falsely that the historians try to sort out decades later when no one listens. You look at these recent events. You had all the lies surrounding the vaccine. No one's in jail. It comes out, nothing happens. Yeah, the guy that shot Trump in the ear or not. Well, his body was just disposed of almost immediately without autopsy. No one's asking any questions. Epstein, again, no one's no.
And now we have Charlie Kirk's neck of steel stopping a 30-06 bullet.
I mean, and then when we find out 10 years later, 5 years later, that, well, this is really weird, nothing happens. What happened to the Vegas shooter? Even that, I mean, there's this, and even if the truth comes out, nobody reacts anymore because, well, this was 5 years ago. We forgot about it. I mean, shouldn't somebody have questioned Tonkin Gulf incident? Oh, well, only a war.
Well, I was alive at the time, and the only person that I can recall from that time period that was questioning the Gulf of Tonkin incident and doing so incessantly was Senator Wayne Morris from Oregon. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but I remember him.
But it's like, all this wrongdoing. Okay, what do you got?
No. Finish what you're saying. Finish your idea. You're good.
No, that was my idea. Yeah, that does look like it, doesn't it? But
so the famous photo of Trump coming off the podium, really quick. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, it's probably the best photo ever taken of anybody ever.
Right, but I mean, more importantly, the most popular one. Where is it?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, that's hard to
flag
find.
Hanging right here.
Yeah, they buried that online as much as they could. They buried it because when I did an episode on it, it really took a while to find it.
That was the first photo that had been around. Either way, you get Trump with the fist up. What were the last three words he said before he came off the stage, the podium? Into the mic, fight, 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 right here. So what I found interesting, this post is from September 17th, 2018, 5:56 p.m. Eastern Standard. Q, you were right all along. Emmys, red carpet, Keck. Keck was a way of saying LOL, basically on the forums. WWG1, WGA1, where we go one, we go all. Anons picked up on the carpet bombs for you and you alone. Fight, 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 Q. So you have that picture that bears a striking resemblance to this, that picture that they almost seemingly took on purpose before he stepped off the podium. And Trump said before he left the podium, fight, fight, fight. So for that to have been in a post years before that happened, there are other posts that tie to the event. If you go back to Twitter the following day, and I snapshot a lot of this, you had the words "the Great Awakening" trending, the shot heard around the world, and a week to remember. Now, in another Q posts, that all is in one Q post. The shot heard around the world, the Great Awakening, a week to remember. Then the post following that day, which was the 14th, there was a Q post that was posted back in 2019 that says a week to remember. So that post was posted by Q years ago on a day that post was now, that phrase is now trending on social media. So I don't know if you guys tracked all that. But questions?
Well, I'm tracking it in the sense that the shot heard around the world was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo that touched off World War One. And I go back to what I said earlier. I think the second Trump administration we're in a different cosmological world than the first one, and it's almost like we're dealing with a different version of Donald Trump altogether.
Yeah,
because this version of Donald Trump, he lost me with this Iran business. Now, don't get me wrong. The Iranian regime is brutal, and sooner or later has to go. That's what I think of it.
yeah.
But
the Iranians think of it too.
Well, yeah, but the problem I have with it is this does not bear any resemblance to me of a sound military operation. I don't see any exit strategy, or the goalposts and the motivations for the operation keep changing. And I go back to this idea that those two assassination attempts on him, I think, were messages. We'll let you live, but you have to play the game our way. Is I think the message that was being sent. But that's just me.
Now, one of the other things that had come out after that assassination attempt were he basically was able to kind of rebuild Secret Service, and they were able to do, but they talked about how communications from international entities, specifically from the Middle East, in regards to instructions to do something like that with Trump, were siphoned through our intelligence agencies, Secret Service being one, which at the time you had a DEI hire running the Secret Service. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that gave them access to within the Secret Service was their communications, because what they think is that a lot of these instructions are coming from the Middle East, whether it's from Saudi Arabia, Iran, or whoever. I think that may have a significant tie, like you were saying. If these guys tried to do something and assassinate him, this is his vengeance. But another interesting thing too was you had military on site for that assassination attempt. President, or at least former presidents, their Secret Service detail, they're not assigned military unless it's specifically for some type of explosive device removal. If I'm not correct, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe when you read through what they're allotted, it's only Secret Service. Trump, for whatever reason, had military there. So that too kind of begs the question, what was going on? Now, I know during when he gave that speech that I had referenced, when he talked to Biden's presidency, referred to Biden's presidency as the pause. He also hit on that speech came out on a day that there was a video released by the Fourth PSYOP group called, what's that video called, Tino?
Yeah, we played that one. It was something very, a lot of interesting symbolism in that one, Joseph. If you haven't seen it,
and if you haven't seen that video, I mean, I could either play it or I could just tell you about it. Very, very symbolic video.
Joseph, did you see that video?
No, I don't know what you're talking
Mike,
about.
pull it up. We'll just mute the sound, because for some reason that music track is copywritten. But yeah,
so what's interesting is it's copywritten by the military.
Yes, it is. It was the Fourth Military PSYOP group that put out this public video about, well, how military videos usually follow some sort of a trend or some sort of a plan.
Yeah,
this is the weirdest military video I've ever seen, and I've made a few, so I should know. Mike, it's not up yet.
Wait, let's see.
Did you mute the sound?
Yeah, I'm gonna mute it right when I start.
Okay. Yeah. Enjoy this, Joseph, and then you can explain it when this is done, because none of us have figured out what the hell this is. Who is this for? Is my now question.
It's a 3-minute video. The clown on the TV.
Was that Berlin?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is in the backdrop in that section, and I think I can play it.
Das ist Berlin, Berlin, die meine Liebe hat. Das ist Berlin.
You can hear audio.
As the world watches and listens in awe, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Oh hell, just let it play. I'll siphon out the music if I have to. But again,
It's just there's audio that plays during it. That's old audio about psyops.
but again, who is this for?
This is the U.S. military made this?
Yes. Intel.
I'm kind of jumping in and out because there's audio clips that are
Yeah, just
relevant.
let it play. I'll have to. I'll just mute the music later.
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target not the body, but the mind of the enemy. The target of psychological warfare is against the enemy's mind. It is words and ideas. Ammunition.
That's Chet Huntley.
Mhm.
Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldier, and at the same time
is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
Gripping at my skin, the walls of night closing.
but the use of this force as an integral part of combat has now taken on new form.
To say my last goodbye.
This gets me every time. It's like,
These are the Psy-War soldiers.
Verbum Vincent.
what do you think, Joseph? What we're doing?
Well, it's clever because it in itself is a bit of psychological warfare. Pardon me, to get people to think that to second guess themselves. Have I been made the victim of psychological warfare? Are they manipulating me? So on and so forth. And once you do that, you've achieved a certain amount of epistemological influence over someone. But The real question I would have is who's that for? And my guess is it's for everybody.
I would say for everyone. The other thing that I had kind of thought myself was that was a shot from the military out to the CIA.
Possibly.
Because you have the clown on the television, and one thing that Q had referred to CIA was as clowns in America.
Uh-huh.
And one of the interesting things is Snowden had made the tie that they refer to top level NSA cyber operators as witches and warlocks.
Mm-hmm.
You have a witch that basically knocks the clown off the TV that originally wasn't burning, and at the end of the video it's on fire, which is kind of like the destruction of the mainstream media, which would be the CIA's main form of control, being destroyed, by NSA or military or whoever's doing that. But basically they make him disappear, and it turns into that military psyop soldier.
Well, there's never been any doubt in my mind, and I've said this to Tino and other people many times over the years, that as Mr. Globalone gets closer and closer to the end game, the factional infighting increases, because you want to be the faction that comes out on, and this is what I see going on in this country. It's not just the deep state that we need to be concerned about, but the several factions within it, because they're at war with each other. John Kennedy found that out the hard way. Trump has always had a unique advantage over other candidates. Number one, because he's an outsider, and number two, because of his very odd connections that he's had, through his family, with his uncle at MIT, through Roy Cohn, of all people, that he knew when he was younger. So, I suspect that Trump has always been a deep state avatar for whatever faction's behind him.
100%.
So that's exactly what I see in that commercial too. Its message is being sent. But I think the ultimate prize, again, is the people themselves, and that's ultimately who it's directed to. Though, personally, I think these people are setting themselves up for massive failure, all of them. But that's me.
It isn't to play this video after the conversation we just had. It sort of ties it all together.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's the demonstration of everything we just talked about in effect.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Yeah. People have to start curating multiple sources of information.
Yeah.
That's
they have to start
one.
thinking.
And that was the biggest thing that came from Q was, research and check things for yourself. And what I find interesting too was around the time that Q was putting out, look at people's net worths, see what people are worth. Google had decided to start posting people's net worths on their search engine or anywhere. And that was basically because they didn't want you to see that. They didn't want you to search that. I've had the opportunity of kind of meeting, not kind of, but of talking to and meeting a couple former heads of JP Morgan out in London. And it's these guys don't want anybody to know who they are.
No, they don't. And this is what disturbs me about what's going on with Trump 2.0 is we're watching, this so-called sovereign wealth fund that he wants to set up and to include some of its assets in the form of cryptocurrencies, or as I like to call them, kleptocurrencies, and the tokenization of assets that the global financiers want. And I've been trying to warn people about this as much as I can, and people don't seem to get it. Well, I'm making lots of money off my Bitcoin. Yeah, but it's a trap.
Yeah,
it's a trap.
Oh yeah.
You lose cash and the ability to transact anonymously and privately. You've lost your freedom.
Yeah.
And the tokenization of assets, that's just Sovietizing American currency. That's all that is. It's a Marxist doctrine of currency. So I don't know where it's all coming from. I have my suspicions, given some of the people that Trump has surrounding him in his administration.
Mm.
And that's one reason I'm so suspicious of the Charlie Kirk murder. We know who
No,
these people are.
100%. And that was the other thing too. You see pointed out. It as weird as this one was with the Q stuff, and I hate to harp on the Q stuff. For me, what Q ended up being was just a massive, I guess for myself, proof of like what I had thought was going on and what we're seeing. But it like he had said, was, careful who you trust, because even this new regime, whether these are factions at war, it's like, how can we trust them? Who can you trust? Type of thing. Because it looks like they're all fighting for the same thing. Granted, they may have their priorities, laid out slightly different, but I don't think anybody truly is pushing for freedom for everyone, without some form of control or a leash.
It doesn't seem anybody's pushing for freedom for everyone. I'm not.
Because that's dangerous for anybody in power.
Well, democracy is a terrible thing because you may not get what you want. Worse, you may get what you want. But I'm not sure we have any democracy at this point anywhere. Because if everything, what was it? Was it Jefferson Davis, or who was it that said a democracy can only function if we have a well-informed public? Who was that, Joseph?
Well, several people, from Benjamin Franklin, for one.
Yeah.
Thomas Paine said similar things. Thomas Jefferson said similar things. I don't think it was Jefferson Davis, but
did I say Jefferson?
You said Jefferson Davis.
I mean, I thought it dated back that far, but well, he wasn't that bad of a guy.
No, he wasn't. He actually wasn't. But
David. Well, he got yeah, okay. Ibuprofen's kicking in.
My grandmother would have loved you because, as I've told you, Tino, my grandmother was a Confederate Bonapartist from the get-go. So she would have loved you for that comment. I'll never forget her leading me by the wrist when I was a boy. We went out to Washington, D.C., and then during one of the days on our vacation, we went out to the battlefield of First Manassas battlefield. My grandmother's dragging me all over the battlefield. This is where General Beauregard did that, and here's where Stonewall Jackson did this. She didn't care one whit about the Union.
That's wild.
No, she was French, and when I say she was a Confederate Bonapartist, she was, because my uncle, you know what my uncle's name is? Robert Lee Farrell.
Oh shoot! Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a giveaway.
That's wild.
Anyway,
so cool.
So, all right. So fine. It wasn't Jefferson Davis who said that.
No,
but we still need a well-informed public.
Yes.
And now we have finally gotten to the point. And I think what Q did, if one thing was successful, it made us question. Well, some of us question everything and think independently. That's what I like about the Q post that you showed me. It wasn't about telling me what to believe. It was for me to start looking at things other.
The other thing that Q did was more subtle, but I think it was also influential because you can see things happening in the alternative media that was not there before.
Mm.
And that is that Q began to train people in how to question or interrogate texts and decode them.
Mm.
which you have to do if you're going to be any sort of intelligent reader in a universe that is inherently analogical. So you have to be able to do that. And if you look at what has happened since then, just look at, again, I go back to the other big event in the last couple of years, and that's the Charlie Kirk murder. Normally that would have been just another sad event.
Mm.
But what happened as a result of one or two people, Candace Owens, Baron Coleman, people in the alternative media, questioning the narrative that we were being told about what had happened, we're watching that narrative collapse in real time. I'm a kid. It took 7 to 10 years, maybe even up to 15 years, for the narrative of Kennedy's assassination to start collapsing and affecting and reaching the general public. So in however many short months it's been since Kirk's murder, that narrative is gone. They've got a real problem on how they're going to try and convict that kid that they've pinned it on. A big problem.
Yeah.
This is happening at breakneck speed.
Oh,
So you can I think to a certain extent credit Q with some of that, because those posts, those drops, those breadcrumbs as they were called at the time, those things did at least, whether you agreed with them or not, and I didn't, but what at least they did was they started training people. Well, look at this, look at that, and start connecting things for yourselves. You may not connect them in the same way, but at least people started doing that, and they were never doing that before. So, again, that's to his credit, whoever that group was.
It's like if anything have come out of this of the past 5-6 years, it has been the erosion of trust in the media that have been lying to us for 100 years.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I think that is one of that, combined with the internet onslaught. As you look at the rise of depression and psychological disorders, and people can't sleep, and this is one of the things people, they have to start turning off TV.
Yep.
They have to take a step back, because everything is created to cause anxiety and
Yep.
give you stress and lose track of the bigger picture. So if you want to catch up on world media news once a week, turn it off and then reflect on it. Look around you. How does these things affect you? Do they affect you at all? Is there anything you can do about them? If there's nothing you can do about them,
And I'm going to say something very controversial, but I mean it in full confidence and full intention. Music started before 1963.
Of course it did. Have you heard of Gilbert and Sullivan?
In fact, music started before 1900. Get your heads out of modern music and back into music that will challenge you to recognize patterns and their inversions and their permutations and so on. You ain't going to get that. Listen to 99% of the one-dimensional crap that they're beaming at us 24/7.
True.
I'm
Nothing
sorry.
will set your mood like a little Wagner.
Wagner, Beethoven, my favorite, of course, the Bachs, and particularly the Bachs, because they are the ones that taught everybody else, bar none, like it or not. But get your head out of this modern crap. Turn off the television. Turn off your radio. Music is more than sticking a femur bone through your nasal septum and putting on a loincloth and listening to boom, 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 boom.
What videos are you watching?
I'm not watching those, but this is what I hear the neighbors, and that does nothing but entrain your mind.
It does.
That's all it is.
I would say, listen, go for a walk in nature without
go for a walk in nature and leave the cell phone at home and the earplugs and the radio and listen to the birds sing, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and that's what grounds you more than anything. That's one of the things I've really enjoyed about the military is weeks out in the forest. It takes a couple of days, and then all of a sudden you become in tune with the forest and you hear things much better. You think much clearer. And I think a lot of people, they really, really need to be grounded.
Yes.
All right. Besides the end of the world that's pending, well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we have anything going on newsworthy these days
No, not at all.
to reflect on. But my take on watching a news event unfold, speaking of, whenever I hear something like, we bomb Iran or whatever, my rule is I'll take a step back for a week and see what comes next, see what happens, instead of reacting emotionally, which is what most people unfortunately do. Stop making up your mind and just take a step back, and then look and listen and see what happens. Maybe there's always more to any story in the media than we're being told.
Yeah, true.
How do you cope? How do you deal with it?
Me? Well, the same way, Tino. Take a step back, be patient, and make connections. And watch what's going on and pay attention. To me, it's very apparent that this, you used Iran, so let's take that as the example. Like I said, I have extreme ambivalence about this whole thing. On the one hand, that regime had to go.
Yeah.
Period. There's no argument here. That regime, the culture it represents, is completely, utterly contradictory to Western culture. Period. It had to go.
Humanity.
And interestingly enough, we're watching Russia and China now telling that regime, you have to go. So its own allies have had it, So
Oh yeah.
No,
but the problem I have with it is this is like some sort of bizarre Operation Barbarossa without a Führerbefehl to back it up. It's just this unfolding miasma of military incompetence with constantly shifting goalposts that have ultimately boiled down to, well, it'll stop when I feel like it. Okay.
Heard that before.
Yeah. What military operation is, my personal intuition or anybody else's, a bellwether for calling off military? And if that's the case, why did you get involved with it to begin with?
No.
And we've been on the cusp of they're 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon for the last 20 years, according to Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah.
I remember Bush saying that. Jeez.
Yeah. So okay, if we're doing it now, why didn't we do it then? We had all the precision guided weapons since Desert Storm.
Well, they got better.
They got better. Yeah, right. Now
we need to expend the old arsenal so we can buy new stuff, Joseph. Come on, you know how this works.
Yes, I know how it works, but it's just
we need to empty out the inventory so it's like first in, first out on the freezer shelf. Like, these are coming to expiration date time. Now, one thing that concerns me about this is, okay, we made the decision to bomb the crap out of Iran. For whatever excuse we put up, I have quite a few Persian friends that are all celebrating. In fact, their families in Tehran gets worried when they hear bombing stopping, because they're worried that we are going to stop before the job is done. Now, when I hear Trump talk about negotiating, and I might be a bit of a hardliner. You tell me. At this point, I don't want negotiation. If you're going to do this stupid thing, you can't stop until they're gone.
I agree with you. If you're going to go in and finish the job and get out. What bothers me is I can't see that there's any exit strategy here.
No.
I'm getting the distinct impression that they didn't think through the consequences of the Strait of Hormuz. And there was that telltale remark by Secretary of State Rubio that we went in because Israel was going to go in and we had to control the game.
I remember him saying
now,
that.
If that is not a wag the dog scenario, and if that's the case, then we need to reevaluate that whole relationship, and we need to do it yesterday. And the thing that we need to start doing is, by God, you cannot hold any political office in this country if you or any member of your family holds a dual citizenship, period.
True.
And all of those people need to be registered as foreign agents if they do, or if they are receiving money from that outfit over there in Tel Aviv. That's where I'm at right now.
Yep.
I think the Strait of Hormuz thing incident did point out, though, which of our NATO allies are actually willing to help us when shit hits the fan and not.
None of them.
Exactly.
And
why are we even part of this?
Here's the problem with NATO. If none of them are willing, then we need to get out now, and let them fend for themselves. Yeah. And by the way, who are they going to fend against? I don't think Russia has any intention or desire to invade Europe and try and manage that whole thing. They did that unsuccessfully. For a number of years.
Overrun the Ukrainians. They're probably not going to make it to Berlin.
Yeah, probably not. No.
I always thought this was, first of all, I expected somebody to have thought this out in depth detail on how this was going to play out strategically, tactically. And one day we were going to wake up and the Iranian people who had taken to the streets and taken their country back, end of story.
Yeah.
But if you put out a story that, we're talking with the Iranians, you were negotiating, that tells the Iranian people, if we take to the streets,
exactly,
you're doing a deal, we're screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm hoping some sort of back channeling is going on here, and there's some signals.
I agree with you. This whole thing has the Iranian people were rising up before all of this began. Yeah. And then we tell them, no, get back into your homes. We're going to blow the shit out of something. And what are they supposed to do? This is what I can't. I'm totally agreed with you. And especially this business. We're in negotiations with them now. So okay, they're going to come back out and have the same old regime that's going to round them all up and kill them.
Yeah, that's what this started with. The first week of signaling was perfectly straightforward and clean. Now it's very confusing.
Well, I'll tell you what I think is going on, and that again is this has been a first class fustercluck, pardon my allusion here, from the beginning, in that this has been an ill-conceived, ill-timed operation. I don't know where to begin to tell you my disappointment in it. It's Tino, I have the same feeling about what's going on and the way they've managed it from the way they started and where they are now, because I have that August 1941, let's go to Kiev feeling about all of this. Okay. Forget about Moscow. Kiev is much more important.
It's nice. They have good food there.
Yeah, they have good food there, chicken Kiev. Okay, Field Marshal von Rundstedt, go enjoy your chicken Kiev. But that's the feeling I get from this. It literally is. It literally is.
It did seem incredibly rushed, and I had sort of expected there would have been more something beneath the surface that would have wrapped this up by now, because this would have happened. I had hoped this had happened based on a plan. And now I'm questioning that. But it's not the first time that Trump had played rope-a-dope with everything, and all of a sudden everything changes tomorrow. That's, I suppose, the interesting thing about politics today is you never know what happens tomorrow. Maybe we'll get, gas prices down to $3, or maybe there's nuclear war. We'll see.
I feel like that's what the public, that's the way the public is gauging how this is going. Gas prices go up. Oh, it's going bad. Gas prices go down. Hey, I kind of like this.
That's the one thing I always wanted. They've always said that no one can win an election if the gas price is over $100 a barrel or expensive. Well, in California, that's been the case for the past 10 years, and they seem to be, of course, they're not really running an honest election. But anyway, they keep winning.
Loonifornia, not running honest elections.
Oh, you heard it here first.
Perish the thought. Say it isn't so.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I hate to say it's pointless to vote over here, but you know, I don't think any of
Guys,
the stuff's
I
legit.
mean it. I know you're tired of me saying this, Tino. Get out. Let that state fall apart without you.
I'm afraid that if I leave, I might start voting Democrat.
What?
Mike, when I die, I want you to check who I vote for.
All right, you got it.
All right. I think we need to end this on a happy note of something that's a little weirder.
Oh,
and you
Well, let's go back to the feet really quick, right?
Happy, joy.
happy, joy. Murder, death, kill. Now, I want to play a video. You both know the stories. And these are not the only three. I'm just gonna steal a bit from Fox here and play the story of these three people that have died or gone missing. And previously,
This is happy to you?
Yeah, you'll like this. It's about alien scientists and Air Force generals. You'll love it.
A retired Air Force general who vanished in New Mexico.
Yeah,
William McCaslin went missing last month. Members of Congress are warning this could be a national security issue. The general was involved with the Pentagon's most advanced aerospace research. He oversaw a classified space weapons program. McCaslin was in charge of the Air Force Research Lab at a base in Ohio. It's rumored that base holds extraterrestrial debris from the Roswell crash site. The general was tied in with the UFO community. A source told the New York Post the general was a gatekeeper for anything UFO related in the Air Force. He retired due to mental fog, but investigators say he's still highly intelligent and capable. McCaslin was an avid hiker. His wife last saw him leaving with a backpack and a .38 revolver. No phone, no glasses. He disappeared 6 days right after Trump announced he was releasing the UFO files. And he's not the only one. 8 months before the general vanished, a rocket scientist who worked under him years ago also went missing. She was hiking in California with 2 other people. They saw her smiling and waving 30 feet behind them. When they turned back again, she was gone, vanished in plain sight. They searched for days and couldn't find any trace of her. This is a very, very strange situation.
Yeah.
11 days before the general disappeared, another scientist was shot dead on his porch. Carl Grillmar was known for discovering signs of water on a distant planet. He was gunned down in California. Freddie Snyder was later charged with his murder. He has a rap sheet, but was let out of jail by a Newsom-appointed judge weeks before he alleged.
Of course.
Anyway, see this.
Now I've blogged about all 3 of those people.
Yeah, I figured I wanted to get your take on that. What's going on then? Because we get a bunch of scientists getting killed a couple of months before that.
Well, in all seriousness, I think it's more narrative preparation.
So are the aliens
I was
coming
telling
back to
Tino.
Cleveland?
I was telling Tino before the CISA just bought the alien.gov domain.
Yeah, it's the government they're going to pull out the alien card, and they're getting us all prepared for the alien threat. I suspect also that part of the card is going to be, oh, ET just told us all of our religions are wrong. Please take our mark in your hand.
Project Blue Beam?
Yeah, something like that. Because that they are literally trying to put together the beast system as we speak, and I make no bones about it. That's exactly what they're trying to do. So part of that's going to be, oh well, let's make all this other stuff come true too while we're at it.
We have to be scared into a centralized globalist government so we can fight back against But what did these 3 people do?
Well, here's before we get to those 3 people, my problem with this scenario is exactly what C.S. Lewis said: beware when you call down high heaven upon your heads, because it might show up. And that's what they're doing. But what did these three people do? All of them. The General McCaslin did, as a matter of fact, have a connection to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, the home of the old Air Technical Intelligence Command. Jesse Waters is correct that supposedly some of the Roswell debris was taken there. The implication that Roswell was an extraterrestrial craft, as you know, I do not adhere to that theory at all.
Right. Yep.
Nowhere close to it.
I know.
Yeah, it wasn't that at all.
No.
They took it to ATC in Dayton because there were a lot of those paperclip fellows there at the time at Dayton.
Yes.
That would have recognized that stuff. So yeah, this is what they're involved with, and they're constantly pumping out that extraterrestrial meme. This is why they don't like me. They never invite me to their conferences.
Oh, but they had such funny hats.
I've got all the funny hats you could ever want in the world, including my own pickle hobbies. So there, take that. And by the way, you still owe me a visit so I can show you the thing that's going to make you green with envy.
Oh, I'll be there, and I have to bring you the thing that I have to convince you that you can own.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're good at canon law, because that's what you're going to have to do.
Well, I know you wanted a cannon.
Not that kind of cannon, you nerd. No. If you're going to give me a gun, give me a gun. Something with a 9-mile range and that shoots a projectile that weighs a ton. Okay, that sort of thing. That's what I think of.
Well, stop your damn neighbors playing that rock and roll music, tell you.
Oh, listen. Oh, you don't want to go there, because I do have words with people that want to subject me to that crap. All I have to do is open the windows of my house and turn on Bruno and pump up the volume, and it's over.
What is that amazingly good sound?
You know what I had? Listen, you mentioned Wagner earlier. In college, I'm surrounded by these people with their rock music and their gospel music and all of this one-dimensional sludge that they subjected. I had a record at the time, and I had a really good stereo system too. I had a record at the time that was called Organ Orgy, and it was nothing but Wagner on the pipe organ at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, and it was loud.
Oh wow! How Nuremberg?
Huh?
How Nuremberg of you?
Yes, how very Nuremberg of me. How very Bayreuth of me. We're doing the entire ring cycle this week, folks, on pipe organ. And the volume is going to be cranked. Oh, I'm serious. Go on YouTube, Tino, and listen to the Ride of the Valkyries from that album on the organ orgy on the organ of the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, and crank the volume. It gives a whole new perspective to Wagner.
I was very partial to Gilbert and Sullivan.
You would be.
I would. I liked HMS Pinafore. The Admiral song, come on, this is great. I even tried to sing it.
All right, okay. If you like Gilbert and Sullivan, I will send you a version of Gilbert and Sullivan you've probably never heard before.
Sounds very intriguing.
Tom, have you heard Tom Lehrer's The Elements?
Yeah.
You have?
Yes.
You have?
Tom Lehrer's? Yeah.
Okay, well, that's Gilbert and Sullivan.
My mom was a great big fan of Tom Lehrer.
Yeah, well, that's Gilbert and Sullivan. It's straight out of big Gilbert and Sullivan fan. He says, "Oh, that's right. Oh, I never thought of it. Oh, okay, yeah."
Well, usually it's performed by men in tights on stages.
Yes, I know, and if that's your thing, Tino, good for you. But it ain't mine.
Unfortunately, they didn't put the women in tights back then.
honestly.
I mean, the cousins and the aunts were dressed up a bit, but come on.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Well,
Anyway.
gee, this was fun.
Yeah, well, yeah, we managed to get around to the fun stuff after the
See, I told you that would be
missing
fun.
people.
The missing alien scientist. That's always a good laugh.
Tino, you need electroshock.
Fine.
I know a good therapist. They'll use cherry tasting tongue suppressors when they strap you down. So
hey, come on! It's not like I'm telling the Japanese prime minister about Pearl Harbor, now is it?
I mean, the guy is so utterly classless.
That was funny. Not for
we
her,
sort of need Japan as an ally, Don. Don't put ideas in their head. They sank the damn fleet once. They can do it again.
I mean, we can always send him to Germany and try to explain to Mertz how to get the trains running on time.
Oh, please. Oh, Mertz. Oh, don't get me started.
There was an election out there this week.
Yeah, there was, and the AfD did very well.
I know.
In the western part of Germany.
Very interesting, but
the handwriting is on the wall, folks.
Oh no, not wall writing out there. That doesn't go well.
Not wall. No.
I know.
Okay. Yes, Shiloh. Just a minute. My little pooch is going ballistic over here because she knows we're wrapping up. Yes, just a minute. Yeah, I know. Just a minute. Yeah, I know. Anyway, yeah, Mertz is. I don't know.
I mean, Heo Stammer or the French guy, I'm not sure. But like we said before, these people cannot be the ones who are honestly in charge because together they have the combined IQ of a sultana.
The smartest leader in Western Europe right now is Prime Minister Maloney. What does that tell you?
Well, and she just lost a referendum against overhauling the Italian justice system. Not that it would ever need such a thing.
Oh, no, not in Italy. No, of course not.
Oh,
I'm sure that wasn't.
It is the very model of probity and propriety. Yes.
There's nothing to see here, okay? Forget about it. Everything's fine. We don't take care of it, okay?
Oh, there's no bank fraud here.
Judge, I don't know the judge. The judge is not a friend of mine. Don't know why the hell Italians turned into a guy from New Jersey, but anyway. Yeah, that was an interesting vote.
It's a mess. It really is.
It's almost a bad movie. All right.
Yeah, it is a bad movie. Anyway.
All right,
guys.
Well, Joseph, it was good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Good to meet you.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Joseph. Thank you for the opportunity.
Somehow, I think we should every now and again get together and break down news stories. I think that might be fun.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm going to be doing an interview with Catherine Fitz this weekend, and I imagine that we're going to be doing quite a lot of that. But,
did you see that interview I did with the Swiss whistleblower?
No.
Last Sunday, like 2 hours. The guy that blew the whistle on the Swiss banks on destroying the bookkeeping on the Jewish banks and the hidden accounts.
No. I'll have to look at. Send me the.
I'll send you the link, but I'll be curious on maybe having a chat with her about where all the Nazi money went after the war. Alan Dulles.
Oh, they never recovered. The Allied legend that they recovered all that crap is totally wrong.
Dear Lord, no. The Swiss still have some of it locked up in a building.
It's not just that. There's another player in Taiwan, as you know.
No, them again.
Yeah.
And the we never even got to.
I'm not kidding you. The World Anti-Communist League.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Taipei.
We didn't even, speaking of global, we didn't even talk to how they got arrested Duarte in The Hague for killing drug dealers.
No.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. They arrested him. And for killing drug dealers? How's that a problem? Anyway. It's like, isn't that like a fine at best?
I can't figure this out. There's something in the water in the Netherlands. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
And it's the same stuff they put in the water in Lunifornia. So there.
So is the stuff they also put in the chocolate cookies?
Probably.
Oh, damn that green cake.
You got to cut back on those, Tino.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel, liking, follows, and maybe even join me on Patreon to help out. I am just a guy, a historian, traveling around all these historic places in Europe on my own dime, trying to bring them to you.